Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call this regular work session of the Burnsville City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted both in person and online, and the clerk will note that Council Member Gustafson is absent this evening.
Remember.
Members of the public may attend in person if they like, or the public can watch this meeting online on burnsvillemn.gov/meetings or on Comcast Channel 16 or 856-59. The public can also participate through Zoom by joining us at zoom.us/join. And the information is available on our meeting webpage for all of the background materials that we have and in the council agenda packet. So with that, our work sessions are all very informal, and we go to the items on the agenda right away. So the first item on the agenda is the discussion on billboard regulations, and our Community Development Director is presenting, Jeff Thompson. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So back on the July 11th work session roundtable discussion, the Council asked staff to bring a future agenda item forward to discuss the city's billboard regulations. And so we're doing that here tonight. We've spent the last month or so just reviewing the comprehensive history and background on billboards, and particularly the billboard removal requirements in Burnsville. Because at the roundtable, that was kind of the general discussion about that. So tonight, we're just going to provide you with some of the background information, outline two different aspects or questions for the council related to billboard removal, and then we have a couple policy considerations for the council about those two items. So quick history. Yes, so over time, we've seen the gradual removal of billboards, and that's a result of a number of actions that the council has taken since it looks like back to 1965 when the first ordinance was adopted in Burnsville. It included billboard regulations. So billboards were in existence, and up until 1988 we had 23, and as you can see, those billboards have removed over time.
We did a lot of work in the 90s to get down to 12.
Yes. And so, won't go through all of this in detail, but yes, in the 1990s, as you referenced, Mayor, the city actually established a task force to look at, these are complicated. These are on private property, and they obviously have lease agreements typically with the owner operator of the billboards, as well as kind of resident input. So those in the 90s was the community engagement that was done, and that resulted in 1998. Adopting an amendment to the ordinance that regulated billboards and kind of in a comprehensive manner. A lot of those regulations continue today. So the framework of how we allow billboards is very similar today, and that is we do actually permit billboards in Burnsville on a fairly restrictive basis. We only allow them in our I-1 and I-2 industrial zoning districts, which are, and they have to be along a principal arterial. So we're really looking at the kind of the MRQ Highway 13, 35W corridor. And we do have a separation requirement. And so I think in general, the sites that are allowed for billboards generally have them on them. But there are provisions to allow billboards and allow those billboards that conform to that ordinance to continue. As part of that as well, that any billboard that was outside of that, we generally think became non-conforming, right? If it didn't meet those requirements at the time, or these new ordinance requirements in the 90s that continue today, they would be legal non-conforming and subject to the statutes and our ordinance provisions about that. And then in 2012 is when the city, you may recall back in the 2008, 2009, leading into 2012, the billboard companies, particularly Clear Channel, was kind of launching this dynamic technology on billboards, changing them from the static display to the kind of video projection or the dynamic billboards that change more frequently. And Burnsville, like most cities in the metro that have or had billboards and did, adopted regulations to address kind of that new technology. And so, again, those are kind of the two main provisions. We do allow billboards in the community, and then we have some provisions to address dynamic displays. Won't go through those ordinances in great detail, but we allow for the conversion of existing static billboards to have a dynamic face. As part of that, there are a number of provisions that need to be met. There's some enhanced aesthetic requirements. You'll see those on the dynamic of enhanced materials for the structure. Our ordinance requires them to allow for public service announcements, both for like Amber Alerts, but also for the city to use for public service purposes. And then I think, germane to the council's question you asked us to bring back is, the ordinance does require when you convert a billboard to a dynamic face, the owner of that has to remove one other billboard somewhere else in the community. So codifying that, the policy of the council to remove billboards elsewhere in the city. And I should note, I didn't put it in here, but we do restrict the dynamic faces to the 35W corridor. So where you see them today, that's the only location we currently allow that conversion to occur. Previously, this is the application from Clear Channel that the council recently approved. So Clear Channel had requested, previously we only allowed one sign face of a billboard structure to be dynamic. And the council, in response to a request from Clear Channel, did approve that now both sides of that face can be dynamic. All the other provisions remain in effect, though. So there have no other changes to that. In particular, that removal requirement continues to be in place in the ordinance. So that's a quick summary of our dynamic display ordinance. We did just want to, as we were, again, our scope was broad. We wanted to make sure we were bringing the full history to you. Yes. Wanted to let you know that there are two other agreements in place. These are not related to dynamic displays or dynamic billboards, but the city has two other agreements in place with property owners that require the removal of billboards, and by chance that's this year. So we wanted to let you know that these agreements are in place. I'll walk through them briefly. It's a separate question for the council, right? The dynamic display is an ordinance. The council could certainly initiate, if you wanted to seek policy change on that, initiate an ordinance amendment to change the dynamic display removal requirement. Separate from that is the question of, does the council also want to consider any changes to these existing agreements? Understanding that these are agreements between the city and these owners, we haven't had conversations with them until we got the policy direction from the council. So the first is 1989 PUD when Burnsville Marketplace was developed. There were, I think, 4 billboards on this property when it was developed. The 2 along 35W were allowed to remain in place. As background, when we were looking at the history, oftentimes the trigger for removal of the billboards was when the property developed. So a lot of these billboards were on properties that weren't previously developed, so they were kind of the principal use of the property. And then once development happened, oftentimes that's when the city required their removal. In this case, the PUD agreement allowed the 2 existing signs on 35 to remain after development, and then put a removal timeframe on that when the previous property owner passed away.
Yep.
And so that actually happened last year, and it's within 13 months of the death of that property, the previous property owner. And she passed away end of last year. So we're coming upon the deadline, that 13-month deadline for removal of
Mrs.
those
Young?
2 billboards. Yeah, Miss Young, Jean Agnes Young.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's, again, a PUD agreement approved as part of the PUD approval codified in the agreement for that redevelopment project. And then the second is at Burnsville Storage. So this is on the east side of 35W, north of 13. It's the one that's on the mini storage site. It has a little bit of a history that was, again, in 1984, when the expansion, again, associated with redevelopment of the site, is when, as part of a conditional use permit, the council added a condition that required that removal when the lease term expired. Yeah. The lease between the billboard owner and the property owner. We haven't done the full background on when that lease expired. We just know that in 2007, the property owner commenced reconstructing it. There was a dispute between the city and the property owner that resulted in a settlement agreement that we have that says the existing billboard needs to be removed when further development happens, or June 1st of this year, whichever is later. And so again, pending this discussion, we haven't taken any action on that, but there is a pending deadline here now of removal of that deadline as part of that settlement agreement. And that's the location of that one on the Burnsville storage property. So as I mentioned, we really have two policy considerations for the council here tonight. We're seeking direction on. First, do you want to initiate the ordinance amendment to remove the billboard removal requirement for the dynamic display conversion? That's kind of question number one. And really independent from that, these are really two separate policy discussions, is do you want to pursue talking to the owners about amending those existing agreements which require the removal of the billboards at Burnsville Marketplace and Burnsville Storage? So with that, Mayor and Council, we have Cole Verkland here from Campbell Knutson, just in case there are questions. I'm understanding we haven't, again, as I said, pursued conversations with these property owners, understanding that these are codified in existing agreements pending the discussion here tonight.
Could you put back up the slide that showed us how many signs we had from the 80s, and then most recently, I think there were some, that one, 2023, how many was? And also the process, if you can talk a little bit about the process that you went through with the owners, and because if I understand, there have been no conflicts with the removal of the signs, like in 2008, and and coming down, we have in 2023, then you're down to 8 billboards, but we still have the 2 that have been agreed upon. So.
Mayor and Council, what I can say is that when the ordinances were adopted on the dynamic conversion, when those existing billboards were then converted in complying with our ordinance, the owners complied with it, right? They understood the ordinance and what it required, and so when they did the conversion to the existing billboards that are already dynamic, they did the subsequent removal, which is why you saw the reduction in numbers from that time. The other ones, we've been having conversations with the property owners now of Burnsville Marketplace, and they're certainly aware of this condition. So again, we haven't taken any other further steps in those discussions because we wanted to get the council's direction before we finalize that.
Yeah, because Burnsville Marketplace is an interesting one. Burnsville Marketplace, the land is owned by the Young family. The shopping center is owned by a group from Canada. And he was just here recently, but I was not able to meet with him because he was looking at doing some improvements at the shopping center. He did very great work on the south side, going from, I think it's all full from where they have I think it was hair products, and going all the way south to the new Carter store. So all of that is all well filled. But going north, there are some dark spaces, and they're working hard to get that filled. So with that particular one, is it the group from Canada that you're working with? And rather than the Youngs, because the Youngs, they leased the land to the group from Canada.
Yes, and the ownership structure of the lease, the land lease and property ownership is reflected in the PUD agreement as well. So it's so all parties to that land lease, because it is unique to have a land lease and an owner, both of those parties are included in that PUD agreement. So the agreement is with all parties.
With the fee owner of the land?
Yes, but also with the leaseholder.
The leaseholder
correct,
of the
they're
land.
both reflected in the PUD agreement.
And that's a very interesting agreement, because when I first read through all of that, is that, and I was really, well, actually, was surprised that Jack Young did that. there's some history with Mr. Young. He didn't like County Road 42 being built, so this was back in the 80s. I don't know well, those of us who have lived in Burnsville for a long time, he stood in the middle of County Road 42 with his guns and not allowed the construction company to do the work. So there had to be some public safety and some things that happened, but yeah. He's a very interesting individual. He went to my church. And then his son is now taking over, Mr. Young is gone. He's been gone for a long time, but that was very interesting back then, and to read all of that in the paper back then. But yeah, but I can see that the son would, with the new agreement with he continuing to own the land. It was a smart deal. He owns the land, he still gets from the land, but somebody else is the leaseholder of the land and does business on it. He makes a lot of money out of that land. Yeah. There were a lot of things that were done that way back then in Burnsville. The landowner, and like L. Baker owned the land, and the business on top of it was owned by Craig Reber. It was roasted pear. Okay, Councilman McKeely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you brought this item to be.
Oh, are you finished? Ready?
No, I just wanted to understand and just.
You're giving us a little bit of Burnsville history. Society.
Well, because it's very interesting if you want to go back and understand some of the stuff. But the nice thing about that task force, and I can tell you that on 13, what is now Sue Fisher Park used to belong to Matt Fisher. Matt Fisher did not like government, but he liked me. So I went with Tom Hansen because we needed the land for a park for softball for girls. And he gave us the land, but we also, at the time, he had to take down the billboard that they had on the land. And they did that. So we got the land, but, he did that. We got the land and we got Sue Fisher Park. He just wanted it to be named after his daughter. I said, well, you own the land and you're giving it to us, so why not? So I came back to the council, and so we have Sue Fisher Park. But he was generous in that way. But he didn't like government. But when we talked about, the city, and we needed to make the city continue to be vibrant and appealing, and he did it. He took the billboard down. So that was on 13. And Liza's still good to us, even though her dad has died. Yeah.
It's funny, I talked to Mike Valentine for an hour on the phone today, and so I've gotten 2 Burnsville history lessons.
Call Mike O'Connor and he'll give you the third.
I'll do that when I leave.
1960 to date.
Well, yeah, Mike O'Connor will have a lot of, yeah,
Well, he's the original town clerk, township
Yeah.
clerk, and paid all the bills.
yeah,
Probably wasn't very many back then, but
yeah. Good. But that's a little bit of history, so it's interesting. So what the staff is asking us is the ordinance amendment to eliminate billboards removal, and this is only when we convert to. And the thing is, we still allow billboards. We just have conditions that it must meet. So, yeah.
ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one looking over this over the past 3 or 4 decades can only surmise one thing, that the city of Burnsville, the council at the time, wanted to eliminate all the billboards or as many as possible, for whatever the reason. It sounds like there was some good rationale with some of those empty lots that had a billboard. As it got developed, there was probably some billboards in the heart of the city that wouldn't have fit, obviously, the redevelopment. But we've come to a point where we hardly have any. They're only on major arteries, and I can't come up with one single sound, defensible, rational reason why we would continue to be so penalizing to billboards, as if there's some evil thing that we want rid of out of our city. And so I don't want to remove any more. I don't think the removal of one to get another one updated to modern standards makes any sense whatsoever, unless you're trying to just get rid of them. And I think we're at the point today we can remove that. And where they sit today, I think they're fine. I personally would remove this policy that we have. We're trying to take them away off of 35W that are that's part of the Burnsville Marketplace Center. I would leave those alone. I would leave the ones alone that Young's own, because someone passed away is not a reason to take a billboard down, in my book. I've driven around the city. We hardly have any left. And I don't think the goal today is let's get rid of all billboards, period, end, or get it down to there's 2 or 3 left that are electronic. So I'm in favor of changing our current policy to eliminate the requirement of these being removed, eliminate the requirement of taking away a billboard to update one to modern digital formats, and let the property owners have the ones that they have today and continue to lease them and rent them and utilize them for, I believe our agreement with Clear Channel has got a great benefit to the city, using those electronic changeable billboards for community notices, amber alerts, lots of other things. So the benefits from a fixed image to the digital is tremendous. And it's a tremendous asset to the community, can be used as an asset to the community, versus a fixed image, which it is what it is. When they rent it and they slap up a stretched material, it is not going anywhere until it gets taken down, and it can't do anything more than just that. So these digital boards are a dramatic improvement, and offer the city an opportunity to use them as an asset as well. So that's why I brought this up. I think it's time to stop this detrimental and, I think, anti-business policy of taking them away, and let's at least right the ship from this day forward and leave them alone.
Anybody else?
I tend to agree. We have 8, and the ones that I've reviewed and looked at, most of them are advertising local Burnsville businesses. I know the one on 11 and 13 has had Destiny Church on it forever, which is a Burnsville church.
No, they went to Apple Valley.
What's that?
They're in Apple Valley. They moved.
Oh, well, then we should take that one down. But I think overwhelmingly, the ones that I've seen are Burnsville businesses. So I kind of look at it as an economic development tool, and the ones that we have, like Dan said, are on our major arteries. They're not in off-putting areas, cluttering 42. So to me, I agree. I don't think we need a whole lot more. If we were going to be met with an additional billboard, I would certainly want to review that. But I think the ones we have now don't seem like they're intruding on anybody's back window.
Okay. Anybody else? Kara?
I'm good with removing the policy so that we keep the ones that we currently have. I mean, that's a pretty low number. 8's pretty low.
Okay. So you want to remove the requirement that if we're going to go conversion to dynamic, you don't take one away?
And they should be able to go digital on both sides. There shouldn't be any limitation on that, which I think that's done.
Yeah, well, that's what we have
Right.
now with Clear Channel.
Yep,
It's
that was
going-
one step in the right direction. This will finish
Yeah.
the job and
Yeah.
right the ship.
The only, I guess, question I would have is if one of the sides that's not digital, like I'm thinking about the one on 13, if those are gonna shine in the back of residential areas. Because obviously with backlit signs, that could create a problem. I don't know if any of these are directly abutting residential areas or not.
Also, I know the electronic
Well-
has a requirement that it moderates, has a light sensor, and it dims down at night.
Yeah, Jeff,
which
can you
is
put it back to
required.
where the storage is on 13, because that's the only one, the other ones are all on 35W. So
Trying to get back.
you had it,
Bit
the
of a
one
little bit
slide
delay.
that showed, yeah. No, the location of the sign on
My clicker's not working. so
your
that's-
clicker's not working.
There we go. This one?
Yeah, so the one on 13 is on 13 and 5? On that storage lot? Because that's,
No, the sign number 5 on this map?
yeah,
Yes, that's on the south side of 13, just
Yeah.
at the Burnsville-Savage border.
yeah. So again, some history, because you say, at the time, Burnsville was cluttered, and we were looking at creating a visual appeal to the city. And when you look at all of our neighbors, and perhaps because we're older, we had a lot more billboards than Lakeville didn't have any. And I don't think Lakeville has any except for on 35W, and they don't have any now. And the same thing was with Egan. And at the time, the city was cluttered with a lot of billboards. And I remember, and this was in the 70s, and I flew into LAX, but I had to get down to Orange County. And driving from LAX and LA County, there were so many billboards on the freeway coming. Boy, but when you hit Orange County, there were none. You could see neighborhoods, you could see businesses, your eyes were not set on all of this clutter. And we had a lot of clutter, but in 1997, we started to work with our community, and even the business community looked at all of this. So from my perspective, if we're going to have a vibrant community, we're not taking away anything. And I think the agreements that we have on the table now with Burnsville Marketplace ought to be completed. They agreed to it, we agreed to it, and we were caring enough to let the billboards stay up and allowed the billboards to be an income for Mrs. Young. And they agreed to that when Mrs. Young passes away, that the billboards would come down. They agreed to that. So I believe that we should honor those agreements that have been set. But I would like our current ordinance on billboards and the requirements to stay put, but and I will go along to eliminating the condition that if we put a dynamic sign up on both sides, that one has to come down, so that it will continue to stay at 8 unless they meet all of the requirements and wanting to put up another billboard, and that they stay on major arterials. I think when we took down a lot of those billboards on County Road 42, that was really well received by the business community as well. And also on 13, because if you look at 13, there are only 2 on 13 now. And the one is the Destiny Christians one, and then that one. But and most of it is down south of 13 on because that was also an agreement that was made, and Councilmember Keeley was on the council at the time when we had the dynamic signs, and that was done because those signs are on Kramer property, those two dynamic signs. Yeah, on Kramer property. So, yes.
Mayor, if I'm hearing a little bit about, so let me just, I want to confirm something. So the current ordinance, right, there is the removal requirement.
That's
And I'm
right.
talking about the dynamic display conversion. There's the removal requirement.
Yep.
That's one requirement that I'm hearing discussion on. The second thing I just want to make you aware of is the current ordinance separately says that dynamic billboards are only allowed on 35W
Yep.
north of 13. So on this map, that
Yep.
would only allow
Yep.
billboards 1 through 4 to be
Yep.
dynamic, not 5 and 6 along 13, or the 7 and 8 at Burnsville Marketplace.
Yeah.
The council wanted to allow dynamic displays in additional locations beyond signs 1 through 4. We
Well,
would also need to amend the ordinance regarding
7
that.
and 8 are, 7 and 8 are coming out because those are the agreements that were made with the Youngs, and what, not the Youngs, but with the Canadian company.
I think we're talking about changing that policy tonight, because I don't agree with that.
Well,
And it's up to them, they're in agreement, so if they want to honor it, but I would pull it and say, you're welcome to keep them. There's no reason to take them down. They face 35W. They're not in a residential area, they're right on an interstate. They're no different from the other ones that are on the interstate.
well, the agreements were there, but, and did he talk to you when he came into town? What was his name again? Because he wanted to have a meeting with me.
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Okay, so,
So I guess to answer your question, I think that needs to change too. I would encourage all of them, and certainly smooth the path out. If they want to invest a lot of money to upgrade them, remember, part of that upgrade to go digital means they have to improve the materials
Yeah.
that are used around the pole, which, if you notice the one on 35W that Clear Channel did, it's a lot nicer looking billboard with all of the limestone base
Yeah.
and treatments
Yeah.
that they are required to do. So it's not only an enhanced digital board that the community can use, it's a dramatically enhanced look of the billboard, column and so forth. So I don't know why we would restrict that investment, right?
okay, well then let's have a conversation about 7 and 8. 7 and 8, there's an agreement. So am I understanding, Councilmember Keeley, that if they agree to follow through with the removal of the sign, then you're okay with that?
Yeah, if that's up to them, I would inform them that if this council votes, that they no longer have to remove them, that we know we're removing that
Okay.
policy. And so if they would like to keep them and continue to rent space on them or do whatever they do,
Okay,
I don't see any reason why we would not at least give them the option to do that, given
Oh.
the change in the policy.
City Manager Lindberg.
Mayor and Council, I'm hearing a council majority answering the first question that we have before you tonight to eliminate the removal requirement for conversions to be a yes. We're going to remove that.
Correct.
The second issue that's come up
Yeah.
before the now third policy question is this additional component of the ordinance. My question would be to Jeff and potentially the city attorney. I haven't talked with staff about other implications of that. Just want to make sure that the council is fully informed of the considerations that they might need to have in front of them to make that change. Jeff, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, that's why the question is, do you want us to pursue amendments to those agreements, understanding that these are
Well,
agreements between owners?
Not just yet, because maybe you'll get at 3 votes to 1 with that, but with the agreement. But with the conversion and that the removal part, I'm going to be okay with that. So if we're going to put up a dynamic sign, you don't have to take down the other. So I'll go along with that. Okay.
Mayor, the second thing that I'm hearing come up from the council's perspective is to allow dynamic billboards in the other locations, which I just want to make sure that there aren't other implications operationally or
Yeah.
legally that we need to be considering
And that's the thing
with that
is,
suggestion.
yeah, with dynamic signs south of 13 is something that we need to talk about, because that means we're opening up on 35W dynamic signs on, that's a whole different conversation. So I just wanted to make sure that we have the first bullet. So amending that, I'll go along with that, that if we're gonna have a dynamic sign, you don't have to remove an existing one. So it'll still be 8. And so the next,
Should we vote one at a time, or take
Yeah.
each of these separately and just,
Yeah, because I'm confused at this point.
yeah? we're
Can we do
kinda-
this one at a
we're
time?
going in
no,
circles,
that's
so
the
let's
reason why
get
I'm
back
saying
to
with
it.
the first bullet.
Yes, I think that was made pretty clear by,
And I said I
So,
would go
yeah.
along with
Yeah,
that,
okay,
okay?
number 2.
Yeah, amendment
Yes,
to existing
absolutely.
agreements.
Pursue agreements to
Yeah,
amend them, so to
Yeah.
to remove the
So, because
to
they're,
eliminate the removal requirement, I guess. is
yeah,
probably what
you would like that to happen.
it- Yeah,
Kara?
I don't think we need to remove any billboards, so.
Well, there's
I
an
think give them
existing
the
agreement.
option. I know there's existing agreements, but like I'm fine with if we tell them it's up to you whether you want to keep it or remove it. We're no longer requiring you to move it. They can make their decision on that.
Okay,
And it could be that they're far enough along in their planning. They're like, yeah, no, we're taking them out. That's fine. But I don't care to require them to remove.
Vince?
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned with the one at Burnsville Marketplace, but if they were going to convert to digital and improve the pole, I don't know, that would almost be a waste of money because the whole pole is almost hidden by the fence line and everything else, so it might end up not even being cost effective for them to do that based on our ordinance as it is, so I don't see the need to require them to remove it, but if they're gonna remove it anyways, then that's fine.
Okay, well, the city manager and community development director, you have 3 people on the council who you can have a conversation with the folks from Burnsville Marketplace and let them know that the agreement to remove is up to them.
Council, we have our direction on the 2 questions that we have
Yeah.
in front of you. I will try to re-ask it as to not be confusing this time. There was a suggestion about the prohibition south of, I believe it's south of 13
Yeah.
in ordinance.
Yeah.
I heard at least one council member suggest that prohibition was something that there was interest in eliminating. I would ask for the council's clear direction on that.
And that's if they wish to make the static sign dynamic. We're saying, is that okay south of that line or not okay?
Correct,
Is that
essentially
correct?
eliminating
I would-
that
yeah.
prohibition.
The
in
prohibition is, anything south of 13, dynamic signs south of 13.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if it spins. I don't care.
Okay,
I don't.
I think we
Vince?
take down that
Well,
prohibition.
I
It's an
guess I'd repeat
imaginary line
what
to
I
begin with.
previously stated, that if part of the dynamic conversion is improving the pole, it seems like it wouldn't make sense to do that, at least at the 42 location, because you can't even see it,
Yeah.
so.
but I mean, it's just a prohibition, Vince. Are you okay with removing the prohibition of dynamic signs south of 13?
I would be more comfortable just allowing it along 35 rather than on 13.
Okay, but along 35, so south of 13, yeah, because the prohibition is that you can't have dynamic signs going south. They
To me,
stay north of 13.
It doesn't make sense to allow dynamic on 13.
Yes, okay. So, so what I'm hearing is that allow dynamic signs along 35W,
I know.
south of 13.
Would that be new signs as well? Like
Only new dynamic signs.
But they can be in new locations as well?
On 35W, there's, because the thing is, on 35W, there's, the commercial area is just Burnsville Marketplace until you start to go down towards Lakeville,
So-
because most of it is residential.
So Mayor and Council, I think the question that the city clerk just asked is frankly different than anything that staff has put in front of you tonight. So what I'm hearing very clearly is eliminate the requirement to eliminate traditional billboards with the addition of dynamic. That staff will also, on the second point, inform those folks or enter into amendments of the agreements that currently exist with a prohibition. Jeff, as I understand it, the current ordinance, and please correct me if I'm wrong, limits dynamic billboards to 35 north of Highway 13.
Yep.
I'm also hearing the council say, well, I'm hearing two council members currently say, we're okay with eliminating the north of 13 thing, keep it on 35. The city clerk just asked a question about other locations along 35, and quite clearly right now, we have the 8 locations, and that's what we've been discussing tonight. You're opening up an entirely different conversation if we're talking about adding billboards.
No, I don't think we're talking about adding
No,
billboards.
That's just what I wanted to
no,
make sure.
it's, and not adding billboards, it's just
No.
the dynamic
Okay.
signs. And-
Managing the existing
Yeah.
8.
And then,
Very clear, thank you.
and keeping in place the ordinance that we have right now with regard to billboards, with all the conditions that come along with it. So, but, thank you, Kara, for, not adding signs, but, if dynamic signs in the commercial area is okay, I think right now, our ordinance says that it's allowed on I. That's what the ordinance says now.
That's correct, Mayor.
Yeah. Billboards are only allowed on I-1 and I-2 industrial zone. That's all.
Okay.
That's what the ordinance says. So, and if you look at 35W, close to the 13, you have some industrial area in that area, both east and west of 35W. But then when you come further on south, you're getting into residential. You have some commercial with the hotels and restaurants, and you get into residential area. And that gets to your point, Vince, with regard to any of the dynamic signs. If you're going to look at 35W on the west side, now you're going to have all that neighborhood, if you have dynamic signs, right in that area, because you've got live-in suites, and right behind live-in suites are all of those residential area. And then you come on further south, you have all of those residential area.
And sweet.
I mean, people realize that static billboards have lights on them, right? Like they have big floodlights
Bright floodlights.
shining on them.
Yeah.
So it's not like suddenly it will be all dark and quiet and wonderful. And here's the thing about when we get into dynamic billboards. Dynamic billboards allow communities to do things like flash amber alerts and different things like that. So, like, when I'm looking at where we allow a dynamic sign versus a static sign, like, that's part of what I'm thinking about, is those are not just great things for advertising, but those are really powerful things for getting information out to the community in emergency extremely quickly. So that's why I'm like, wherever we presently have a sign, if they wish to incur the cost to upgrade that, I wouldn't stop them from doing that. Like that, because that's a benefit to us that we are not paying for.
Well, and I agree, it'll have some visual appeal to the structure. But it's up to them, to Vince's point, because I know
cost.
exactly which board you're talking about over at Burnsville Marketplace. It's the second one that's right there where you can hardly see it because with the trees and then the
It's
pole,
overgrown.
yeah.
on the-
But I think what we have in place right now with the zoning, I think that continues to work, and the conditions. So the prohibition on 35W is what I hear lifted, but I'm hearing also not on 13. Leave 13 the way it is.
Well, Madam Mayor and Council, I think we have to leave. I would just like to create an ordinance that allows the business property owner to make the decisions on whether they're gonna upgrade or not, and not decide for them.
Well, we have an ordinance in place that they can decide.
Well, I'm saying throughout the whole city, even on Highway 13. Highway 13 is a massive truck route. It's not exactly a small road. It's getting some massive upgrades with some great separated intersections to keep all of the massive cars and traffic moving. It's pretty close, in my mind, to an interstate. And those are the arteries that we have running through Burnsville that we currently have billboards, nowhere else. So I think we just, I would recommend that we lift the ordinance, the restrictions, and just let those property owners along 13 that have a billboard, if they want to make the substantial investment in going digital, great. It'll be a better looking billboard. It'll reflect better on the city compared to the older style billboards. But I wouldn't, I guess I'm against making that decision on behalf of the property owners through an ordinance.
I would like to make sure that we all understand that it's a permitted use only on I-1 and I-2, whether it's on 13 or 35W.
Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with the existing
Well,
billboards. It's-
If we just all understand that that's what it is, it's not going to just pop
Well,
up.
we're not talking about adding any, so I don't know where that zone discussion piece comes in, because we're not recommending that we change the ordinance to say, hey, if you want to have a billboard on these routes and you own the land, go ahead, right? This is managing, as we said earlier, the existing ones.
So
That's
that
it.
will be adding billboards.
No, we're
On
just leaving
13.
the ones that we have alone and letting them convert to digital if they want.
Okay, so the one,
That's it.
so the 5 and 6, if they want digital, yeah, I can just see Destiny Christian,
Good, go digital. That's a better
Go
looking
digital.
billboard.
yeah.
And it's more useful to the community.
Well, if they want a 5 and 6 are the two billboards that we have that we're just talking about. I'm okay with that. Vince?
You're okay with 5 and 6?
Well, if they want, if they want to upgrade and pay the price to upgrade to dynamic signs.
Significant cost.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
So it's okay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine keeping it on 35, but at the same breath as you just said, I don't see that happening because it would be a significant investment to
Yeah.
convert.
I'm just saying,
I-
let's let the property owners make that decision, not
I am just,
restrict
you
it
know,
and make that decision for them.
I just don't want the city to be cluttered. If you're only talking about 5 and 6, 5
Yeah,
and
that's
6
it,
is
5
fine.
and 6.
Just 5 and 6,
Yeah, not adding.
not adding.
Yeah, that's the only two that exist.
Okay,
anyway.
everybody,
interested in adding.
5, not adding.
8
Okay,
is fine.
that's all.
Yeah.
So, and the ordinance stays the same.
So, Mayor and Council, what I'm hearing is an answer to the two questions that we put in front of you tonight. First, to change the conversion requirement to eliminate existing. We'll make that change. We will also communicate that same change through amendments to the current agreements the city has with particular property owners. We're also hearing that the ordinance amendment will also include allowing any of the current 8 locations to be
not adding.
converted, any of the current 8 locations to be converted to dynamic should the interested parties wish to comply with the rest of the ordinance as it exists.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not adding, it's going to dynamic signs, and if they want to upgrade and pay the prices, then,
Yes.
okay?
We have our direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members of the council, there are no other items before us, and there is nothing
Round table,
on
Roundtable.
roundtable.
reports.
Yeah, I know, just reports. There's nothing on roundtable as I see it. So, Vince, you have any reports to give?
Just that fire muster is rolling along and people are gearing up, ready for.
I'm sorry, did you say? What did you say? I thought
Old
that was
habits
a
die hard.
blast from the past. Maybe you can update.
Festival
Well, we
and
have
fire
been
muster.
having historical conversations, so.
We're stuck in the Burnsville Historical Society today.
90s. The festival is moving along. All hands are on deck. Everybody is preparing, and we're gonna have an awesome, awesome festival. And I think we're gonna outdo our 40th this year, based on all of the hard work that's been put in so far.
Nice.
Okay, good, thank you. Kara?
I have nothing other than a moment of silence for Outback Steakhouse.
What happened?
They closed abruptly.
Oh.
So, for all that you don't know, Outback gone.
Bummer.
So, yes, it's a moment of silence for
That is
Oh,
a moment of
no, I
silence.
like that
for
restaurant.
blooming onions.
Didn't we just go there?
Did, yeah, did,
We've been real advocates of their business.
yeah, we like that. We like that restaurant. There's not enough of us.
I all of a sudden want some delicious chicken.
We're gonna have to go to another city.
And salmon.
Oh, that's, and they have the best lamb.
That's too bad.
Yeah, that is too bad. That's a good restaurant. I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoy them.
Councilmember Keely?
I'm looking for notes from MBTA. I'll bring it next month. It's just rider update and stuff and growth. Real quick, we are purchasing additional vehicles for MBTA Connect because the growth continues to be very significant, and the current fleet can't keep up with the demand, which is extending the wait times to be too long. 25 minutes on average right now. The goal is 20 or less. And our service area is restricted by the number of vehicles, so we'd like to expand the service area and the frequency. So we have several vehicles on order that are cutaways. They're sort of like a Class C RV where you've got the cab of the Detroit frame, right? And then they customize the back with a much larger capacity. I always refer to those as rental car shuttle buses. And then those take quite a while. They're back ordered, or they're just, their production time is still hampered by elements of tales of the pandemic. And so we were able to get a hold of 6 vehicles. I think they're 163,000 apiece. They're a Dodge Ram 3500 that has been modified to have a wheelchair, a swing-out wheelchair ramp. But if you're familiar with these Dodge 25 and 3500, the best way to describe them is it's like an Amazon delivery truck. It's those. They can, they're
Like a
long and
Transit.
tall, right?
Oh,
Like, or a
oh,
Ford
like a tall
Transit.
Transit,
Or,
yeah.
Or the Mercedes Sprinter, those types of things. And so we're gonna get 6 of those by this fall and be able to instantly expand our service and then further as the next ones come in. But we're operating on 6 that are well past their usable life. And you may remember when I passed on some information about the advent of MBTA Connect on-demand service, the Uber bus. We did it with existing budget and vehicles that had already been serviced or had already reach their serviceable life. So we were doing it on spare parts and spare budget, and now it's grown to where we're having a hard time keeping up with demand. And so I'm really thrilled. It's something I'm a big supporter of, and so getting at least 6 more vehicles in the near term is going to help dramatically. So that, and, you know, just ridership, I believe the growth is 35% over last year, but we're still 35% down from the peak in 2019, and all of that is primarily express service. It's growing, but very, very slowly. It almost is, it seems to be, it's hit that potential post-pandemic initial threshold of being down about 50% from what it was pre-pandemic, and that is express ridership into downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul. But suburb to suburb has grown beyond 2019 demand, and of course, MBTA Connect is just, it's the shiny new object that is just growing faster than we can keep up. So that's the change, the post-pandemic change in the transit world. That's true.
A couple of our residents wanted me to let you know that there's not enough communication or advertisement from MBTA about the services to the athletic arenas.
Sure, like a Twins game or the CHS Field.
Yeah,
the
to
soccer,
Allianz Field or
Or
any of that.
Allianz Field, or
And I
Allianz Field, right.
understand that there is a good service from Burnsville to downtown, but nobody knows about it. And I had 2 people talk to me about it, and he says, why don't they advertise this?
We're nibbling away and doing more and more, but that's one of my complaints for years, sitting on that board, is why can't we allocate more money to marketing? And it's as you know, as we live on federal and
Yeah.
state
And
grants and
it-
taxation.
Yeah, not allowed.
There's so much demand for all of the budget dollars to produce the maintenance and equipment and the buses and replace the
Well,
buses, that it's hard to.
But you
carve out
have
enough.
somebody doing social media.
Yeah, we do. It's
But
all
so
a matter
that
of,
should
it's
be
a function
there
of budget,
because
right?
people don't even see it.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, and I said, well, we have Councilmember Keeley, and I'll let him know the next
I will
time.
bring it back to the board and see if we can find a way to increase it. It's, the creative is being made. There's not enough money behind it to push it out to tens of thousands. It's
Well, if
being pushed
If
out
if
to
they put it
several
up,
hundred.
a lot of us can reshare it. I reshare things when it comes to State Fair, because that's a great service when you take the bus
That one's
from
pretty
here.
well known, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
know about that one, but you're
But-
right. And those other services are relatively new. The concerts, like,
Yeah.
who just, Sheeran?
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran?
Yeah.
And then prior, he set a record at USA.
Yeah.
And these special sporting events, and that's one of our growth areas, but we're adding the service and marketing it as much as we have budget to do, but we need a lot more, no question about it.
Okay.
Because there's a great story to tell
Okay.
there for opportunities to just park at Burnsville Transit Station and ride a hassle-free bus all the way into downtown and back after the event. Thank you, I appreciate it, I will pass it on.
Yeah, very good. From my end, our Municipal Legislative Commission, we always go on recess over the summer, so our next board meeting doesn't start till September, MLC. And then, of course, Metro Cities policy, we're all in it. We just had our first meeting. Hugo and I are on that policy committee on the metropolitan agencies, and that's a perennial issue that goes on and on and on. Should it be an elected or not an elected? So, anyway. And the Community Foundation, we had a meeting, and we're still working with staff on a location for homage, because we're not going to have it in the place that we thought that we have because of the work that we're going to do in facilities. So we have 2 places that we have identified, and Brady is talking with Garrett about that, and staff will let us know if that's going to be a workable solution in the 2 locations. Otherwise,
Can you share what those 2 locations are?
well, there are some of us who like the location right on Civic Center Parkway right across from the sign in, turning in. So it's right there. There's a nice big open space, and that everybody will have eyeballs on it, going to the ice center and exiting the ice center. Or during the festival, you'll see this beautiful sculpture, and then with the benches and amenities around it, so so that's one location. The other location is the entrance into City Hall on the east side. So coming from the ice center, and then you turn into City Hall, that entrance, not the west entrance by police, but the entrance. And so there's a little open area underneath the trees. The only thing is that if you want it to be visible,
Yeah,
it's
that's-
going to be obstructed. So those are the two areas. And both areas have electricity access, because we have electricity going through it with our light, with our poles.
Thanks for sharing.
So those are the two locations that the foundation is looking at. We did a walking tour, and then Brady is working with Garrett on all of that. And I think that's going to be a discussion with the leadership team around all of that. And that's all I have. Anything else? City manager, do you have anything to?
Nothing this month, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. With that, we stand adjourned by acclamation, and we're going to take a 10-minute recess so the control room can reset for the special work session on the budget.